We live in a time when information is everywhere. If you want to start a business, you can find thousands of videos telling you exactly how. If you want to get fit, there are endless workouts and diet plans, all free, all at your fingertips. You can watch TED Talks, listen to podcasts, read books, take online courses. In fact, it's fair to say that for almost any goal you have, the steps you need to take already exist somewhere waiting for you. So if the information is out there, why do so few people actually do it? Why are there more dreamers than doers? Why do so many ideas die in notebooks, so many plans stay as lists, and so many goals remain goals instead of achievements? It's because knowledge without action is just potential. It's not worthless. Potential is important. But by itself, it won't change your life. Knowing what to do doesn't create results. Doing it does. And yet, there's this strange thing we humans do. We confuse knowing with progress. We read a book about leadership and feel wiser. We watch a motivational video and feel more inspired. We take notes at a seminar and think, yes, this is it. I'm ready now. But that moment of clarity is not the same as a step forward. It's a spark, and sparks are only useful if they light a fire. I've met people who know more about starting a business than some CEOs, but they've never launched a product. I've met people who could write a phenomenal book, but the manuscript has been en progress for years. I've met people who can explain fitness science better than personal trainers, but they haven't been to the gym in months, and every time it comes back to the same thing they know, but they don't do. Why? Part of it is comfort. Knowing is safe. You can gather information without risk. You can keep learning without exposing yourself to failure. It's easy to tell yourself, I'm just preparing, when in truth you're hiding. It's like standing at the edge of a swimming pool. You can look at the water, check the temperature, talk about how to swim, read about the right technique, watch videos of Olympic swimmers. You can stand there feeling more and more ready, but you're still dry. And no matter how much you've studied, the only way to actually swim is to get in. Another reason people get stuck in knowing is that action feels messy. When you move from theory to practice, things rarely go as planned. You make mistakes. You discover things you didn't anticipate. You realize that your perfect plan isn't perfect at all. That's uncomfortable. But it's also the point. The doing is where you learn the lessons that information alone can't teach you. I once heard someone say, you can't learn to ride a bike by reading about it. And it's true, you can study physics, balance, gear ratios, and cycling techniques. You can understand the science of momentum and the mechanics of pedaling. But until you put your feet on the pedals and wobble forward, until you fall and scrape your knee and get back on, you don't really know how to ride. You can't skip that part. The same is true for every dream. You can't skip the messy middle. You can't replace doing with knowing. And yet, so many people try. They think if they can just gather enough knowledge, they'll be ready. They'll avoid the pain. They'll dodge the risk. But here's the truth: the longer you stay in knowing, the harder it becomes to move into doing. Because over time, the gap between the two grows. Your expectations rise with every bit of knowledge you collect. You imagine how perfectly it should go because in your head, you've had time to polish it. And now the idea of starting feels scarier than ever because you know you can't live up to the perfect image you've built in your mind. This is why so many dreams disappear in that gap. They don't die because people lack intelligence. They don't die because people don't care. They die because people stay in the safe zone of knowing for too long until the leap into doing feels impossible. If you've ever had a moment where you thought, I just need to learn a little more before I start, be careful. That sentence is a trap. It sounds responsible, but often it's fear in disguise. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of finding out you're not as ready as you thought. The irony is that doing the thing, even badly, is what actually makes you ready. It's not the research, not the preparation, not the planning. It's the action. Action teaches you in a way that knowledge never can. Think about a child learning to walk. They don't sit down with a manual. They don't take notes. They don't study videos of other toddlers. They just try. They stumble, they fall, they bump into things. And slowly, step by step, they figure it out. If children waited until they knew how to walk, we'd all still be crawling. And yet, as adults, we forget this. We wait until we have all the answers. We tell ourselves we'll start when we're ready, not realizing that ready comes first. Doing comes first. Readiness comes from doing. Now, I'm not saying knowledge is useless. Knowledge is powerful. It can save you from costly mistakes. It can accelerate your progress. But it's not a substitute for action. It's a tool, and tools only matter if you use them. A hammer on a workbench doesn't build a house. The carpenter does. So if you have a dream and you've been gathering information, ask yourself, when will I start? Not when will I know enough, but when will I act? Because the truth is, you probably already know enough to take the first step. And that first step is all you need right now. Here's the funny thing about momentum. It doesn't come from thinking about moving. It comes from moving. The moment you take action, you generate energy. That energy fuels the next step. and the next. And before you know it, you're no longer just someone who knows, you're someone who knows. There's an old saying, a year from now, you'll wish you started today. I think it's even deeper than that. A year from now, you won't just wish you started, you might not even recognize the dream anymore if you let it sit too long. Because dreams have a shelf life. They fade, they lose their urgency, they get buried under new distractions. And when people look back years later, they often feel regret, not because they tried and failed, but because they never tried at all. They never got out of the knowing stage, they never closed the gap. So here's my challenge to you, whatever it is you've been thinking about, starting a business, writing a book, changing careers, learning a skill, improving your health. Stop adding more and more to your someday list. Take one thing and start it now. Not perfectly, not with full confidence. Just start, because every big success story you admire began the same way, with a first imperfect step. Nobody launches into greatness fully formed. They begin clumsy, unsure, often underprepared, but they begin. And the people who don't, the ones who keep waiting until they know enough, they stay where they are. The gap never closes. The dream never becomes real. Knowing is the spark. Doing is the fire. You need both, but only one will keep you warm. So don't let your dream die in the space between the two. Cross the gap. Take the step and watch what happens when potential becomes reality. Fear is a strange thing. It doesn't always look like fear. Sometimes it looks like procrastination. Sometimes it looks like I'm still planning. Sometimes it looks like I just need a little more research. But if you strip away the excuses, what's really sitting in that gap between knowing and doing is fear. It's not the kind of fear that makes you run from danger. It's quieter, more polite. It doesn't scream, don't do it. It whispers, not yet. It's the kind of fear that convinces you you're being reasonable, that you're making a smart choice by waiting. And because it's so quiet, we rarely challenge it. But this fear has a cost. It's the reason why so many dreams fade before they have a chance to become real. Because the longer you wait, the more comfortable you get with waiting. The gap doesn't close on its own, it widens. And before you know it, that thing you once felt so passionate about now feels far away, almost unreachable. I've seen people spend years preparing for something they never actually do. They buy the equipment, they take the courses, they talk to the right people, but they never take the first real step. And they don't think of themselves as afraid. They think of themselves as careful. But here's the truth. If you've been getting ready for years, you're not preparing anymore. You're hiding. And I get it. Doing something for the first time can be terrifying, not because you don't know enough. You probably already do, but because doing makes it real. Once you start, you're no longer safe in the theoretical world where you can imagine perfect results. You've entered the messy reality where you might fail. That's what fear really is, the space between what could happen and what might happen. And our brains love to fill that space with the worst case scenario. If you start a business, you could fail. If you share your art, people might not like it. If you change careers, you might end up regretting it. And so you tell yourself, I'll start when I'm more certain. But certainty never comes. There will always be risk. The trick is to act even when the fear is still there. Think about a time in your life when you were afraid but acted anyway. Maybe it was speaking in front of a group for the first time. Maybe it was moving to a new place. Maybe it was having a difficult conversation. The fear didn't disappear before you acted. It faded after you acted. Because fear hates motion. The moment you start moving, fear loses its grip. I once had a conversation with a man who had been dreaming about writing a book for more than a decade. He knew exactly what it would be about. He had character sketches, an outline, even some chapters written, but he had never committed to finishing it. I asked him why, and he said, I just want to make sure it's perfect before I put it out there. What he didn't realize was that perfect was just another name for safe. Because as long as the book stayed in his computer, nobody could judge it. It could live forever in his imagination as a masterpiece. But the moment he finished it and shared it, it would become real. And real things can be criticized, rejected, or ignored. That's the trick fear plays. It tells you that keeping your dream in your head is protecting it, when really it's suffocating it. We tend to think fear is about the thing itself, but most of the time it's about what comes after. It's about how others will see us. It's about whether we'll still respect ourselves if we try and fail. And so we avoid action, not because we can't do it, but because we're afraid of the story we might have to tell if it doesn't work out. But here's what's interesting. When you look at people who've achieved great things, they all have stories of failure. They all have moments when they stumbled, when they made mistakes, when things didn't work. The difference is they didn't let fear stop them from starting. They understood that failure isn't a wall, it's a step. The people who wait for fear to disappear never start. The people who accept fear and move anyway get somewhere. Fear is not the enemy. Paralysis is. Fear is actually a sign that you're about to do something that matters. We don't feel fear about things that don't matter to us. You don't wake up terrified about tying your shoes. You don't feel your heart race when you make a sandwich. But stand on the edge of a decision that could change your life, and fear shows up. So instead of trying to avoid it, notice it. Recognize it for what it is, proof that you care, proof that this matters. And then decide that you won't let fear make the decision for you. I've met countless people who regret not starting something. I've never met someone who regretted starting and failing as much as they regretted never starting at all. Because even if it doesn't work out the way you hoped, you walk away with lessons, experiences, and the knowledge that you tried. You can build from that. You can pivot. You can adapt. When you let fear keep you in the knowing stage, you deny yourself all of that. You deny yourself the opportunity to grow, to learn, to discover what you're truly capable of. And here's something else. The fear you feel before you start is almost always worse than what actually happens when you do. Our minds are masters at exaggerating the danger. You imagine every possible disaster, but rarely does reality match the level of drama your imagination can create. I once worked with someone who wanted to leave their corporate job to start a small bakery. They'd been dreaming about it for years, but every time they got close to taking the leap, fear kicked in. What if nobody buys from me? What if I can't pay my bills? What if it all falls apart? After years of hesitating, they finally decided to start small, selling at a local weekend market. And here's the thing, yes, some weekends were slow. Yes, there were challenges, but none of the catastrophic outcomes they imagined came true. And the joy they felt from actually doing it far outweighed the fear that had kept them stuck. Fear is often a liar. It tells you that the cost of action will be unbearable, but it never tells you about the cost of inaction, and that cost is heavy. It's the slow erosion of your belief in yourself. It's waking up years later wondering what might have been. It's realizing you let fear make your life smaller than it could have been. So if you feel fear right now about something you want to do, take it as a sign that you're on the right track. The goal isn't to wait until the fear is gone. The goal is to act while it's still there. Because once you take that first step, fear changes, it becomes excitement, it becomes momentum, it becomes energy you can use. We often think courage is the absence of fear. It's not. Courage is moving forward even when you're afraid. The gap between knowing and doing is where fear lies, and the only way to cross it is with action. Not reckless action, but intentional, committed steps that move you toward the thing you care about. If you wait until you're not afraid, you'll be waiting forever. If you start while you're afraid, you'll eventually look back and wonder why you ever hesitated. The truth is, fear never really disappears. It just changes shape. Every new level, every new challenge will bring its own version of it. But you'll get better at recognizing it. You'll get better at moving through it. And with each step, the gap between knowing and doing gets smaller until taking action becomes your default instead of your exception. Most dreams don't disappear because they're impossible. They disappear because fear convinces us not to try. Don't let that be your story. Let fear ride in the car with you, but don't give it the wheel. The life you want is on the other side of action. And the only way to get there is to move, even if your hands are shaking and your voice trembles. The gap is only as wide as you let it be. Perfection is such a tempting goal. It promises us safety. It promises that if we get everything just right, nobody will criticize us, nothing will go wrong, and we'll succeed exactly as we imagined. It's the invisible standard we hold ourselves to without even realizing it. The silent agreement we make with our own fear, if I can make it perfect, then it will be safe. But here's the truth, perfection doesn't exist. It's a moving target. Every time you get close, the definition shifts. You think just a little better, and then when you get there, maybe just one more tweak. And before you know it, you've spent months, sometimes years, polishing something that still isn't ready in your eyes. Perfection is the enemy of progress because it tricks you into thinking you're moving forward when really you're stuck. You're busy, you're working, you're making changes, but you're not actually advancing toward your goal. You're trapped in an endless loop of refining instead of releasing. I've seen this happen in every field, in business, in art, in personal growth. A friend once told me he was building an app that would change the way people communicate. I asked him when it would launch. When it's perfect, he said. 2 years later, it still hadn't launched. Not because it didn't work, but because every time he got close, he'd find something else to fix, something else to improve, something else that wasn't quite right. And in that time, other people brought out similar ideas. His window of opportunity closed while he was chasing perfection. It's not that striving for excellence is wrong. Excellence is worth pursuing, but excellence is different from perfection. Excellence is about doing your best with the resources and knowledge you have right now. Perfection is about refusing to act until every possible flaw is eliminated, which means you'll never act. The irony is that perfectionism often kills the very thing it's trying to protect. A musician spends so long trying to make an album flawless that they never release it. An entrepreneur spends years tweaking a product until the market has moved on. A writer spends a lifetime rewriting the first chapter of their book until they've lost the passion for the story. And here's why this happens. Perfection is safe because it keeps you in the world of almost. In almost, nobody can judge you. Nobody can reject you. You can still imagine that your work is world-changing because it hasn't been tested yet. But the moment you release it into the world, it becomes real, and real things can be loved or hated, praised or ignored. That's vulnerability. And perfectionism is often just fear dressed up as high standards. When you look at the people who've created lasting impact, they didn't wait for perfect. They started with what they had and improved along the way. The first iPhone wasn't perfect. It didn't even have copy and paste. The first airplanes were slow, noisy, and uncomfortable. The first version of almost anything looks embarrassingly simple compared to what it eventually becomes. But without that first imperfect version, the better ones would never exist. There's a saying I love, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your work, you launch too late. That's not an invitation to be careless. It's a reminder that iteration is how progress happens. You can't perfect something in theory, you perfect it through real-world use, feedback, mistakes, and improvements. Think about learning to speak in public. You can read every book, watch every great speaker, write and rewrite your speech until every word feels perfect, but the first time you deliver it, you'll still stumble somewhere. You'll realize something sounds better if you change it. You'll notice a joke doesn't land the way you thought. You can't learn those lessons until you get on the stage. And the sooner you get on the stage, the sooner you can get better. Perfection keeps you in rehearsal forever. And rehearsal is safe, but it's not where impact happens. I remember working with someone who wanted to start a nonprofit to help underprivileged kids learn technology skills. She had everything mapped out, the curriculum, the partnerships, the branding. But she wouldn't launch until everything was seamless. She wanted the perfect website, the perfect logo, the perfect training manual. After a year of preparation, I asked her, "How many kids have you helped so far?" She looked down and said, "None." That's the cost of perfectionism. All that energy, all that heart, all that intention, and no real world impact. It's better to help one person imperfectly than to help no one perfectly. When you focus on perfection, you rob yourself of the chance to learn in motion. You think you're avoiding mistakes, but you're actually avoiding growth. Every imperfect action gives you data. Every flaw you discover teaches you something you can use. But when you stay stuck in the planning stage, you learn nothing new. You just polish the same old thing over and over. Perfectionism is also exhausting. It turns every decision into a battle. Should this be blue or green? Is this the right font? Should I wait for better equipment? You start obsessing over details that won't matter to anyone, but while the bigger picture, the thing that really matters, gets lost. And here's something worth remembering: the people you're trying to serve, impress, or reach are not looking for perfect. They're looking for real. They're looking for something that connects, that solves a problem, that inspires them. Imperfect action, done with intention, connects far more deeply than perfect plans that never leave your head. I've seen scrappy, messy first attempts change lives because they were authentic and timely. I've also seen flawless presentations make no impact because they were so over-polished that they lost all humanity. We forget that people don't bond with perfection, they bond with honesty. The cracks, the flaws, the human touches, those are the things people remember. Perfection can feel cold and untouchable. Imperfection feels relatable. So if you've been holding back on your dream because it's not ready yet, ask yourself, what's the smallest imperfect version of this I can release today? What can I do right now that moves it from idea to reality, even if it's not everything I want it to be? Because once it's real, you can make it better. But until it's real, you're just building castles in the air. The first step will almost always be imperfect. That's not a flaw in the process, that is the process. The first step isn't meant to be perfect, it's meant to get you moving. And movement creates clarity. You will learn more in 1 week of doing than in a year of planning. Perfection might make you feel safe, but it also keeps you small. Progress is risky. It means stepping into the unknown, putting your work, and by extension yourself, on the line, but it's the only way to turn what you know into something the world can actually experience. I know it's scary to put out something that's not exactly how you envisioned it. But the choice is simple: imperfect action now, or a perfect nothing later. Most of the time, the people you admire didn't wait until they were ready. They started. And the reason they seem so polished now is because you're seeing the result of years of practice, mistakes, and adjustments. Their early work would surprise you. In fact, some of it might even make you think, I could do better than that. And that's the point. They got to where they are by starting before they felt ready, by releasing work that wasn't perfect, and by improving over time. If they had waited for perfect, you would have never heard of them. Perfection is a mirage. No matter how far you walk toward it, it keeps moving. Progress, on the other hand, is real. You can see it, you can measure it, and it's built step by step imperfectly over time. So let go of the illusion that you'll reach a point where everything is flawless before you act. That moment isn't coming. Act now, improve later. That's how every great thing is built. And remember, it's better to be done than perfect, because done can change lives. Perfect never leaves your desk. When we think about big dreams, we often think in big moves. We imagine grand openings, massive launches, sweeping life changes. We picture the moment everything shifts in a dramatic way. It's a beautiful idea, and it's also one of the biggest reasons people never start. Because the leap looks too big, the mountain looks too high, and the finish line feels too far. The truth is, big dreams are built from small actions. The huge, life-changing shifts we admire almost never happen in one dramatic moment. They happen quietly, piece by piece, step by step, through small, consistent actions that compound over time. But because those small steps don't feel spectacular in the moment, they're easy to dismiss. I've met countless people who underestimate the power of starting small. They say, "What's the point of writing 1 page a day? It'll take forever to finish a book." Or, "What's the point of saving a little money each week? I'll never get to where I want to be." Or, "What's the point of working out for just 15 minutes? That's not going to change my life." And yet, 1 page a day is 365 pages in a year, enough for a full novel. A little money saved each week turns into a cushion, then a fund, then an opportunity. 15 minutes of daily exercise transforms your health more than you can imagine. But because the change is slow, because the results aren't instant, we convince ourselves it's not worth it. This is where most people get stuck. They want the outcome, but not the process. They want the big results without the small beginnings. But the small beginnings are not optional. They're the only way to get there. There's a reason habits are more powerful than bursts of effort. Anyone can push hard for a short period of time. You can go to the gym every day for a week, or work 12-hour days on your new project for a month. But if you burn out, if you stop, you're back where you started. Small, sustainable actions might not feel exciting at first, but they have one huge advantage: that they last. It's like planting seeds. You don't dig a hole, drop in a seed, and then stand there waiting for a tree to appear. You water it, you protect it, you give it sunlight. Day after day, you might not notice any change, and then one day you see a sprout, a little later, a leaf. Over time, that small, consistent care turns into something strong, something that can stand on its own. The same is true for any goal. The small, consistent steps feel invisible at first, but they're doing the work beneath the surface. They're building momentum. They're closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking they have to do everything at once. They think, if I'm going to start this business, I need the perfect website, the perfect branding, the perfect plan. Or if I'm going to get in shape, I need to completely overhaul my diet and hit the gym for 2 hours a day. The weight of doing everything all at once becomes so heavy that they never take the first step. But here's the thing, you don't have to climb the whole mountain today. You just have to take the next step, and then the next, and then the next. When you break it down into small actions, the impossible starts to feel possible. Want to write a book? Start with 1 sentence. Want to run a marathon? Start by walking a mile. Want to build a business? Start by talking to 1 potential customer. These small actions might seem insignificant in isolation, but together, they create the foundation for something far bigger than you can imagine. Small actions also have another advantage. They build confidence. When you take 1 small step and realize you can do it, you're more likely to take the next one. Confidence isn't something you magically have before you start. It's something you build through repeated small successes. Every step forward, no matter how small, tells your brain, I can do this. I remember meeting someone who wanted to change careers. She felt trapped in a job she didn't love, but was overwhelmed by the idea of starting over. The thought of quitting her job, going back to school, and building a new career from scratch was too much. So she did nothing for years. Then one day, she decided to take a single class in the field she was interested in. Just 1 class. That class led to meeting people in the industry, which led to a small freelance project, which led to more opportunities. Within 2 years, she was working full-time in a career she loved. The whole transformation started with 1 small action that didn't even require her to leave her old job at first. Small actions are powerful because they bypass the overwhelm. They keep you moving when the big picture feels intimidating. They let you make progress without having to summon massive amounts of willpower all at once. And here's something else. Small actions compound. Just like money in a savings account earns interest and grows over time, small, consistent efforts create exponential results. It might not feel like much in the beginning, but a year from now, you'll be shocked at how far those little steps have taken you. We overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year. We think the only progress worth making is fast, dramatic progress. But fast progress is often unsustainable, slow. Steady progress lasts. I think part of the reason people resist small actions is because they don't get applause for them. Nobody celebrates you for writing one page, or for walking around the block, or for making one sales call. But you have to remember, the applause doesn't come at the beginning. It comes after all those small, invisible actions have built something worth noticing. The quiet work you do when nobody's watching is the most important work you'll ever do. It's what creates the visible success that people later call overnight. But there's no such thing as an overnight success. There's only consistent, patient effort that compounds over time until the rest of the world finally notices. Small actions also help you adapt. If you take huge leaps, they're harder to adjust if something goes wrong. But small steps give you room to pivot. They give you feedback quickly and allow you to change direction without losing all your progress. This flexibility is what makes long-term success possible. And here's the beautiful thing, small actions are always within your control. You can't control whether a big opportunity comes along tomorrow. You can't control whether everything falls into place at once. But you can control whether you take one step today. You can control whether you make one call, write one page, or send one email. It's easy to get caught up in dreaming about the finish line, but the finish line only matters if you take the first step, and the step after that, and the step after that. If you've been waiting for the perfect moment to make a big move, maybe you don't need a big move at all. Maybe you just need to start small. Maybe your next big chapter begins with something so small it almost feels silly. And maybe that's exactly why it will work. In the end, the gap between knowing and doing doesn't have to be closed in one giant leap. It can be closed one small action at a time. And those small actions, repeated consistently, will take you further than any single burst of effort ever could. So stop looking for the big, dramatic start. Start small. Start today. And let the compounding power of small actions turn your dream into something real. Most people believe that dreams disappear because they were never realistic to begin with. They think the dream was too big, the circumstances too hard, the resources too scarce. But in reality, most dreams vanish quietly, not because they were impossible, but because the person who held them simply stopped showing up for them. They didn't vanish in an explosion of failure. They faded away in the silent moments when the work wasn't done, when the steps weren't taken, when the schedule was ignored. And the truth is, the bridge between knowing and doing is built from one material: discipline. Discipline isn't glamorous. It doesn't make headlines. It's not as exciting as motivation or as inspiring as vision. Discipline is boring, repetitive, sometimes exhausting, but it is also the single most reliable force that turns what you know into what you achieve. Without it, knowing is just trivia. It sits in your mind, gathering dust, never transforming into something real. Discipline is what moves it from your head to your hands, from your intentions to your reality. We all have moments where we know exactly what needs to be done. The plan is clear. The steps are obvious. But clarity isn't the problem. Doing it, especially doing it again and again, is where most of us fall apart. We rely on bursts of energy, on fleeting sparks of inspiration, as if success will come from those rare moments when we feel like it. But the truth is, feelings are unreliable. They change with the weather, with our moods, with how much sleep we got last night. Discipline doesn't care about feelings. It's not about wanting to do the work. It's about doing it whether you want to or not. Think about the people you admire most. They're not always the smartest, the most talented, or the most gifted. More often than not, they're the most consistent. They show up when others quit. They keep promises to themselves when no one's watching. They don't rely on motivation to carry them. They rely on habits, routines, and a quiet commitment to the work. They understand that discipline is not a punishment, it's an investment. Every time they show up, they're adding bricks to the bridge that connects their knowledge to their reality. Discipline also forces us to face one of the hardest truths. Knowing something isn't enough. In fact, knowing can become a trap. The more you know, the more you can trick yourself into believing you're making progress, when in reality, you're just collecting information. You can go to seminars, read books, watch videos, and feel like you're moving forward. But without the discipline to act on that knowledge every single day, it's nothing more than intellectual entertainment. Discipline demands that you stop hiding in preparation and start living in execution. And here's the difficult part. Discipline isn't about the big, dramatic actions. It's not about working for 20 hours straight once in a while or going all in for a week and then burning out. Discipline is about the small, unexciting actions you repeat. So often they become a part of you. It's waking up when you said you would, even if you slept badly. It's sending that email you've been putting off, even when you'd rather scroll through your phone. It's making the extra call, putting in the extra rep, reading the extra page, tiny actions that on their own seem insignificant, but over time they compound into something extraordinary. The challenge is, those small actions don't give instant results. You can go to the gym for one day, Eat well for one day, make progress for one day, and nothing changes. This is where most people quit. They mistake the lack of immediate results for failure. But discipline understands the bigger picture. Discipline plays the long game. It knows that success isn't built in a day, it's built in the daily. That's why disciplined people don't panic when results don't show up instantly. They trust the process because they've committed to it. And yes, discipline can be lonely. While others take breaks, you keep working. While others celebrate too early, you're still putting in the effort. People might not understand why you keep going, especially when the rewards aren't visible yet. But that's the thing. Discipline isn't for the crowd. It's for you. It's the quiet agreement you've made with yourself that no matter what happens, you'll keep showing up. There's a dangerous myth that says you should only do what you love, that you should follow your passion, and it will never feel like work. But the truth is, even your passion will feel like work sometimes. Even the thing you love will require you to do things you don't enjoy. Discipline is what carries you through those moments. It's the force that says, I don't need to love this part. I just need to do it because it's part of the bigger vision I'm building. Without that mindset, every challenge feels like a reason to quit. With it, challenges become just another step forward. When you understand discipline, you stop chasing motivation like it's the answer to everything. You stop waiting for the perfect mood, the perfect time, the perfect environment. You realize those things might never come, and they don't have to. You can choose to act in the imperfect moment. You can choose to honor your commitments even when you don't feel like it. And the more you do that, the easier it becomes, not because the work changes, but because you change. You start to trust yourself, you start to believe in your own reliability. That's the real gift of discipline. It builds self-trust. Every time you do what you said you would do, you prove to yourself that your word matters. You stop doubting whether you'll follow through because you've built a history of following through. And once you trust yourself, everything changes. You stop negotiating with your dreams. You stop giving yourself an easy way out. You stop letting excuses win. You know that no matter how you feel, you'll keep going. In the end, discipline is not about being rigid or never resting. It's about honoring the things that matter most to you. It's about building a bridge between your knowledge and your reality, one choice at a time. And yes, it's hard, but so is living with the regret of knowing what could have been if you had just done the work. One kind of hard leads to growth, the other leads to emptiness. The gap between knowing and doing is where most dreams disappear. Not because we don't know enough, not because we're not capable, but because we fail to close that gap with daily, disciplined action. So the question isn't, do you know what to do? You probably do. The real question is, will you do it over and over, long enough for it to matter? Because discipline doesn't just make the difference, it is the difference.